Welcome back to House of the Recaps. Today, I will take you through a 2021 sci-fi adventure and thriller movie. Heads up, spoilers ahead. The movie begins with Earth dying, so scientists look for a new planet that can support human life. They find one in 2063. On screen, we see this planet while a woman explains that it could be colonized by humans. She adds that a scouting mission should be sent there since the trip will take 86 years. The crew would reproduce on the ship, so by the time they arrive, it will be the third generation on board. The crew is genetically created on Earth, using the DNA of top scientists. A man explains that this is why the crew will be specifically engineered for the mission, consisting of kids who are raised and trained solely for this journey. Next, the focus shifts to preparing them for the mission. Since younger people use fewer resources, the plan is to send the children. But Richard, one of the scientists, is worried they might not be ready for the challenges of space travel on their own. Later, we see Richard entering the facility where the child crew is being raised. He suits up and heads to the rooms where the kids live. They're happy to see him. Richard checks on their progress in school, and then tucks in Christopher, Sela, and Zach. Zach admits he's scared, but Richard reassures him that he's safe. The next day, Richard tells the woman in charge of the mission that he should go with the kids to raise and protect them. His presence would also speed up the mission's launch, making it happen in 4 years instead of 7. The mission eventually launches with Richard as part of the crew. The shuttle connects with Humanitas, the spaceship for the journey, and the crew finds their rooms. Richard takes a final look at Earth before they leave. 10 years later, the kids are now adults. We see them going about their daily routines on the ship. They learn about how they will start creating the second generation in their 24th year. The crew moves around almost robotically, drinking a blue liquid as part of their routine. Christopher and Zach enjoy classical music, while Sela wanders the ship, looking out into space. She talks to Richard, feeling like their lives don't matter. Richard tries to comfort her, showing her pictures of his grandparents and reminding her that ensuring a future is important. That night, Christopher can't sleep and listens to the ship's sounds. The next day, while he and Richard are checking the plants in the hydroponics bay, Christopher notices a message about water toxicity on his screen. He asks Richard about it, thinking it's related to chemicals not properly processed from their urine. Richard brushes off his concerns. Still curious, Christopher later asks Zach about an ingredient called T56J. They wonder why they can't access the info at night, so they hack the system and discover that the chemical is in the blue liquid they've been drinking. Zach originally thinks the blue liquid is a digestion aid, but they soon realize it has other effects. It dulls their emotions, making them passive and lowering their desires. They're being drugged to prevent natural reproduction and overpopulation on the ship. They decide to stop drinking it and later share this information with Kai and Julie, along with news of a hidden compartment on the ship. Later, Christopher confronts Richard during a session, saying he knows Richard has been lying, but only mentions the hidden pod 23. Richard responds that the mission may have had a reason for lying, suggesting the pod could be for the third generation. Afterward, Richard sends a message to Ruth asking if he should tell the crew everything to maintain their trust, but the message will take time to reach her. The next day, while standing next to Sela in line, Christopher has a fantasy about her. He keeps staring at her during lunch, but Zach approaches Sela, commenting on how she has changed. Richard steps in, reminding Zach not to touch her as per the rules. Later, in the gym, Christopher and Zach get into a fight, taking it too far, confusing the others. Both men are feeling the effects of not drinking the blue liquid anymore. They hear strange ship noises and head to the observation room, where they meet another crew member. The three discuss the possibility of alien life. Meanwhile, Richard shows Sela dried earth plants in his office. Zach and Christopher overhear them talking, and Zach, feeling jealous, sees Richard touch Sela's shoulder. At the same time, they lose contact with Earth, and Richard explains the transmitter is broken. He and Zach go to fix it while the others continue their tasks. Later, Zach approaches Sela and touches her inappropriately, but Richard steps in to stop him. Zach runs off, and Richard finds out from Phoebe that Zach stopped drinking the blue liquid. Richard then meets Christopher, who also quit the drug. They argue, but Richard explains that the blue liquid was created to prevent behavior like Zach's. He asks Christopher to help fix the transmitter so that when it's back online, Christopher can support him when they report to Mission Control. As the preparations for a spacewalk begin, Zach sneaks into the systems room, while Richard and Christopher go outside the ship to make repairs. Christopher starts feeling new sensations, so Richard keeps an eye on him. After repairing the first part of the transmitter, they hear strange noises from the ship. The crew gets anxious, and then something appears on the screen next to Richard and Christopher. The entity injures Richard, throwing him away from the ship. There's a malfunction on board, and a fire breaks out in the systems room. Christopher manages to bring Richard back inside, and they rush him to the medical bay. Errors start happening all over the ship, from navigation to communication. Meanwhile, the medical team, along with Sela, tries to save Richard's life, but they fail. Sela, the chief medical officer, declares him dead. Later, the crew gathers for a meeting to discuss what happened. They mention a strange creaking sound, and one crew member claims he saw something on the monitor that looked like an alien force entering Richard. Phoebe begins crying, and Christopher reassures everyone that they'll be okay if they stay calm. The ship's systems reboot, and they check the surveillance footage, but it's been wiped out due to a fire in the systems room. The crew now needs to choose a new chief officer. Zach volunteers, but the others insist on holding a vote. Christopher is elected as the new chief officer. Zach is jealous, but congratulates him. Christopher's first task is to lead the crew in fixing the ship, starting with the transmitter and other fire-related damage. Repairing the surveillance system is saved for last in hopes that they can recover what happened to Richard. Sela goes to her office to look through Richard's pictures and videos. When Christopher stops by, she tells him she's supposed to destroy Richard's personal archive, but she's reluctant. She shows him some of Richard's photos, and they talk about family. Christopher wonders if she and Richard were more than friends, but Sela explains that Richard was just lonely. They watch Richard's video diary, where he shares his belief in the mission and his care for the crew. Christopher later finds the rest of the crew in the cantina, upset that they aren't at their posts. Zach explains they're fixing the refrigerators to avoid food spoilage. With some food about to go bad, Zach suggests they celebrate Christopher becoming chief officer with a feast. After the meal, Ty warns the crew not to drink the blue liquid, and everyone throws it out. Meanwhile, Sela and Christopher continue watching Richard's videos, laughing and growing closer. Zach becomes attracted to Julie, and they flirt while the others watch. Later, the crew is seen playfully running around the ship. They go through Richard's personal belongings until Sela finds them in his quarters and orders them to leave. Zach lingers, telling Sela that Richard is no longer around to protect her. Disturbed, Sela goes to the med bay and grabs a scalpel. Christopher, concerned that Zach might harm her, follows him. He finds Sela first and pretends they're romantically involved to make Zach leave. Sela, confused and holding the scalpel, demands to know Christopher's intentions. When he says he's there to help her, she urges him to help control the rest of the crew instead. Christopher leaves and confronts Zach, warning him to stay away from Sela. Suddenly, they hear the strange crackling sound again, and Christopher sets off to investigate as the noise echoes throughout the ship. Kai gets angry when he sees Julie getting close to another crew member and punches him. They start fighting. Later in the cantina, Christopher tries to get the crew to calm down, but they resist. The crew member Kai suddenly attacks him with a tool, and Christopher stops it by hitting him back. He tells them to get medical help for both men and to meet in the common room. During the meeting, Christopher says the fighting must stop and the repairs need to continue. Zach challenges him, saying there's no point because they won't finish the mission. Christopher argues that their grandchildren will benefit from their work. One crew member refuses to work in the systems room, believing an alien is there, and accuses Christopher of bringing it in when Richard died. Phoebe suggests fixing the surveillance system to find out what really happened, but Zach mocks her and tells Christopher to shut up. Zach, now challenging Christopher's leadership, tries to convince others to join him and says his group will be strong enough to fight the alien. Some crew members side with Zach, but others stay loyal to Christopher. Christopher's group goes to the surveillance room to repair the system, worried about the alien. Christopher checks inside first. Meanwhile, Zach and Kai search the system's room for the alien. Suddenly, something happens, and Zach and Kai run out, terrified, sealing the room behind them. Later, they claim the alien attacked them. Meanwhile, Christopher finds the surveillance footage and discovers Zach and Kai killed Richard by electrocuting him, then lied about the alien. Christopher's group decides to keep this secret for now. Christopher and Sela hide the footage and discuss Zach's behavior. Christopher worries the truth won't matter to the others, but Sela encourages him to stay with her, and they end up kissing and spending the night together. The next morning, Zach knocks on Sela's door, saying he's coming in. When Christopher and Sela open the door, Zach and Kai invite them to another celebration in the cantina. Christopher's group arrives, and Zach, standing up, declares himself the new chief officer. Suddenly, Christopher goes to a monitor and plays the footage of Zach and Kai killing Richard. He tells the crew there is no alien, and Zach has been lying. Christopher suggests Zach lock himself in his room while they decide what to do. Everyone is shocked, and Zach confesses. He says he killed Richard to protect them because the alien was inside him and that it's still hiding somewhere on the ship. Zach says they need to find and kill it, and everyone agrees. He turns them against each other, causing a fight. They suspect it's a crewman from the med bay and start chasing him. Christopher follows. Kai hits the crewman first, then the others join in, beating him to death. Christopher's group moves to a safe area, while Zach's group heads to the med bay and grabs weapons. Christopher's group debates what to do, with some wanting to give up, believing they should join Zach later since they're unarmed. Seller realizes Christopher knows about hidden weapons on the ship. Christopher sneaks off to find them. He opens a compartment and crawls in, searching. He finds the weapons but can't open them, triggering an alarm. Julie and another crewman hear him and inform Zach. When Christopher returns with tools, Zach's group is already breaking into the compartments and finds the weapons. Kai thinks they are meant for the next generation, but Zach says they are for them. Two people from Christopher's group want to join Zach's side. Zach asks where the rest are hiding. Sela, Phoebe, and Christopher come up with a plan to approach Zach. Christopher suggests killing him, but Phoebe disagrees. Sela watches through a monitor and sees Zach's group coming for them. They cut the power and burst into the room. Sela tells her group not to resist as they are captured. As they drag Christopher away, Sela asks Zach to talk privately, offering to join him, but Zach mocks her. Phoebe appears, asking if everyone has lost their minds, and says they can choose to act differently, but they tell her to be quiet. Suddenly, Kai kills Phoebe, shocking everyone, including Zach. Zach then turns on Christopher, but Christopher and Sela manage to escape while being chased throughout the ship. They hide in a vent, but Zach finds it and shoots inside. Julie warns him to be careful since he's damaging their food supply. One of Zach's men checks if they were hit, but they escape again. Suddenly, someone fires at them, and they search for weapons. Christopher finds a fire extinguisher and ambushes an attacker in the med bay, accidentally killing him. Zach finds them and opens fire as they run. They reach an airlock, and Christopher tells Sela to get into a spacesuit. He covers the window, but when Zach arrives, he shoots and gets sucked into space when the hatch opens. Zach grabs Sela and tries to close the hatch, fighting with her and stabbing her. Christopher pushes Zach outside, but in the struggle, he also gets sucked out. Before Zach can close the hatch, Sela kicks him out into space. She searches for Christopher, and he eventually grabs onto the ship. They return inside, telling the others Zach is gone. The crew puts down their weapons. Later, the crew eats lunch together. Sela asks Christopher how they can prevent something like this from happening again. They listen to a recording from Richard, who says that no matter what happens, those who survive prove that humans are worth saving. The crew votes for a new leader and chooses Sela. She records a diary, saying they will vote on all decisions from now on and will not return to Earth. The crew works together to repair the ship, living peacefully. Over time, Sela is seen pregnant, and the baby is Christopher's. A few years later, the baby joins other children on the ship. As the first generation grows old, 86 years after the mission began, the Humanitas reaches its destination, and both the older and younger generations look toward their new home on an alien planet. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications to see more videos like this. Thanks for watching.